Okay, what's happening here right now is absolutely insane. The US has sent out its B-2 bombers, sicked them on Iran, and now we officially have a war between the US and Iran. Donald Trump says they have successfully destroyed nuclear targets here. It's also being reported here. The New York Times says the US has now officially started the war against Iran here. And I had already recorded the video saying, hey, in the next 24 hours, things could escalate here. Now I'm looking at my phone at night because I'm still awake from jet lag. Here, yeah, late at night, most people are asleep. Now I'm seeing Donald Trump tweeting, we have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran. So, 3 important nuclear bases here in Iran have been attacked, and this is now even more explosive for the next 24 hours, or even the coming days where things could escalate further. It'll also be really interesting to see how the stock market opens on Monday and how things develop from there. But for now, let's watch the video I had already recorded. We'll go through the entire timeline of everything that's happened here. And at the end, there will also be an update on what's just happened with the attacks. Will we see a massive escalation in the next 24 hours? The US has just deployed B-2 bombers, and some experts now believe that a US strike against Iran is imminent, which, of course, could completely shake up the stock markets and Bitcoin, possibly causing them to crash. Corrections of 10 to 20% are on the table here, and for oil prices, what's happening would be absolutely huge. I'm also seeing some really wild tweets and some extremely risky trades being made. People are placing leverage bets on oil companies and who knows what else. Even the odds of war are being wagered on betting platforms. Those odds have gone up again. We're going to take a look at whether a massive conflict is really imminent here and what all of this means for Bitcoin. But we also have Texas, which is pushing through a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This is now the 3rd strategic Bitcoin reserve approved in the US, this time at the state level in Texas. That's obviously a huge development. And yes, the Bitcoin price is really struggling. At the time this video is being recorded, Bitcoin is experiencing a slight sell-off. So go ahead and smash the like button to help Bitcoin stabilize and shoot up to new all-time highs. We really need all the support we can get. The sentiment is really at rock bottom. There's neither any interest nor, I'd say, is the Bitcoin price pumping at the moment. I'm also back from El Salvador now. Basically, every time I've been in El Salvador, the Bitcoin price has gone up. But as soon as I come back, the Bitcoin price drops a bit again. But of course, that can turn around quickly. And now we'll take a look at whether there's really a risk here of losing the 100,000 support level. Let's go through everything here now, and very, very important. All the scenarios we're about to discuss aren't necessarily my base case, but these are just things that could happen. First, let's take a look at what's going on in Iran. We have breaking news. B-2 stealth bombers from the US Air Force appear to have taken off from their base in Missouri. These are exactly the aircraft needed to attack the heavily fortified Iranian nuclear facility near Fordow. 8 tanker planes are heading in the same direction to refuel the B-2 bombers. You can see images like this, and many are interpreting this as a potential intervention by the US in the war front, or at least in the ongoing conflict. And of course, this could escalate the war to the next level. And now a lot of people are afraid that the stock markets, especially on Monday when they open, will crash. With Bitcoin, we have the special situation that it trades on weekends too, so something like this could even happen over the weekend. So today is still Sunday. In theory, such a strike could still happen. I'm not saying that it's 100% likely. Of course, there's a lot of speculation involved as well. These aren't all my own theories either, but rather from various people, of course. For example, this is already a relatively big media outlet. But it also says right here that this doesn't necessarily indicate an imminent attack on Iran. Still, the movement is unusual, especially at a time of heightened tension. We're dealing with a tense situation here, and movements like these are very, very strange. It also says that a defense official confirmed our reports here at the Wall Street Journal. Official sources said that no order had been given to prepare a B-2 strike. The flights could also serve to put pressure on Iran, while attempts are being made to resolve the stalemate through diplomatic means. The B-2 bombers are capable of carrying the bunkerbuster GBU-57, a 13,600 kilogram conventional weapon, which defense analysts believe has the best chance of actually damaging Iran's uranium enrichment facility. And yes, of course, that's a very, very well-protected thing. If you were to drop a few of those things on it, then the conflict would really be boiling over, and that would definitely cause a setback for the stock markets at first. And of course, clearly, the same goes for Bitcoin. That God is still loading here is a very, very interesting assessment, which we can take a look at. He says here, Bitcoin drops to 102,000 US dollars, while people are live tweeting every movement of US stealth bombers heading toward Iran. We are living in a strange future. Reminder, Every dollar that the US spends or gives up for war has to be created out of thin air. $37 trillion in debt, full throttle, no brakes by Bitcoin. Make love, not war. That's the message here. Bitcoin, not war. We can also see here that the probability of war is already rising significantly. At first, we saw it go up here, but then it dropped back down very, very quickly. And now we're already back at a probability of war of, yes, 59%, almost 60% here. And of course, that also has to do with the movements, which is why there's so much uncertainty. That, of course, is also reflected in the weakness of the Bitcoin price. Naturally, none of this is a coincidence. It's all connected, the geopolitical power games, Bitcoin, the global stock markets. And of course, there are also people who are trading all of this. Now, there are all sorts of tweets like this on X or, well, that's what you have to call it these days. And here, someone tweets, hey, on Friday, I swapped US stocks for a triple leveraged oil fund, and Monday morning, if something happens or tonight in the Middle East, I'll swap oil for Bitcoin again on Monday. Sad that you have to speculate like this. So basically, first on Friday, he goes into an oil stock with triple leverage because he expects there will be a conflict over the weekend. And then what happens if there is a conflict? Oil goes up, Bitcoin sells off, and then he would basically do the swap deal again. That means if oil then goes up, he sells oil at the top, swaps all the money into Bitcoin, buys Bitcoin when it has dropped, and is then happy to have accumulated more Bitcoin over the weekend. But of course, that's a very, very risky deal. You can do something like that, of course, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Honestly, you have to say this is really playing with fire. I know this isn't representative, but I actually asked ChatGPT for an assessment. What are the chances of conflict here? What can we expect if a conflict breaks out here? And I thought that was actually quite an interesting assessment. Here they write, a possible US attack on Iran could drive up oil prices, but also the deal I just mentioned and increase volatility in the stock markets. The S&P 500, which had fallen by 1% on June 20th, 2025, could experience a sharper sell-off if tensions escalate, even though the markets are expecting a contained conflict. Bitcoin, currently at 102,433 US dollars, could drop by 10 to 20% in the short term, as investors prefer safer assets. So they move into gold, they move into oil, maybe even a few government bonds. That could definitely happen. However, a long-term recovery is possible if it is seen as a hedge. Oil price increases above 100 US dollars per barrel are easily possible, but they represent a major risk here. The situation is unconfirmed since as of July 21st, 2025, there is no official confirmation here and measures were known, so they are closely monitoring the stages of development as the outcome depends on whether there is an escalation or a diplomatic measure. And I found that to be a very, very interesting assessment. So in the worst case, minus 20%. Could also be the case that Bitcoin recovers very, very quickly. It's also good that Kroc mentions this here, because Bitcoin has always recovered very, very quickly in such crisis scenarios. Yeah, nobody has a crystal ball here, but there is definitely increased risk. And now, please, no more dumb comments. If I say now, okay, something could happen in 24 hours. Now don't start with the dumb comments, nothing even happened or whatever. I'm not saying that something will happen with 100% certainty. I'm just saying that a lot of people currently expect something to happen. I'm not necessarily in that camp myself, but a lot of people currently believe that there's increased risk in the next 24 hours and that we might have to prepare for a pullback, a correction, or whatever. Will it really happen that way? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Well, now, it actually just happened while I'm making this video. Bitcoin is dropping down to 101,000 US dollars. So there you have it. Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about with the tension over the next 24 hours. This is exactly the volatility I was referring to. But now let's take a look at the law in Texas that has just been passed. I find this really, really exciting and also very important for long-term development, even though in the short term, of course, macro trends always dominate, like what's happening here with the conflict and so on. The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, or is it Abbott, not Abbott, Abbott, has just signed the bill for a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which even allows purchases right here. This makes Texas the third U.S. state where a Bitcoin reserve law has been passed. And it's just really, really crazy because we can see that Donald Trump didn't manage to get the executive order out quickly enough. Now the states are front-running him. And now there's even the possibility that Texas can buy Bitcoin here. I'm also not entirely sure whether this has to be budget neutral or if they can just do it without budget neutrality. Let's take a very quick and comprehensive look at what's actually written and explicitly stated in this particular draft bill. So here you can clearly see it regarding the significant introduction of a strategic Bitcoin reserve by the current administration here in the great state of Texas for the express and specific purpose of investing in various cryptocurrencies. and the primary investment authority lies with the controller of public control of public. I'm not entirely sure how to accurately translate that exactly. Of public accounts, so that means something like, I looked it up, something like control over the public budget, so basically the state's expenditures or state finances. And they're supposed to have the decision-making power here about what happens, whether Bitcoin is bought or not. Yeah, in this little excerpt, it doesn't actually say directly whether Bitcoin, at least how many Bitcoin will be bought, that's more accurate. That Bitcoin will be bought now is probably pretty certain, and I've already shown you that. I said, hey, in Texas, it's all ready to be signed now. The governor just has to sign it. He's a Bitcoiner, people already knew that back then. That's why it's not so surprising for people who have subscribed to this channel that Texas now has a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And of course, every state or federal state that does something like this puts pressure on the Trump administration, and naturally on other countries as well. But it's really, really interesting because a state like this might actually be able to act even more nimbly and quickly than the president. And Donald Trump currently has other problems anyway, since he's busy with Iran and so on, and he's constantly beefing with Jerome Powell. Maybe he should just focus on Bitcoin again, let everything else go, let others handle it, and so on. Just focus on Bitcoin. Stacking sats might also be an idea, but of course, I don't want to tell anyone what to do or anything like that. Of course, everyone has to decide for themselves how they want to live their life here. And now, here's the update. So, we haven't seen a massive crash here, like 20% or something, even though some people predicted that such a huge crash was supposed to happen. Sure, the Bitcoin price is volatile. Obviously, the current situation isn't great for the price, and maybe will even drop below the $100,000 mark. That can happen here at any time. Maybe it's already happened by the time you're watching this video. It's also really important to remember that these kinds of war scares have always been very, very good buying opportunities in the past, especially since it's the weekend and all other assets are basically not tradable. Bitcoin often gets sold off pretty carelessly here. If the Bitcoin price actually manages to hold up well here all day, that would of course be a big sign of strength for Bitcoin. So let's quickly go through the timeline. Here, Donald Trump says, we have successfully completed the attack here, and now it's time for peace. Of course, that's kind of weird too. You want to make peace, so you want to create peace by using violence. That's kind of a strange logic, but yeah, I don't really want to get too involved in the whole story because it always gets very, very heated. Some people say you have to bomb them, others say no, more peaceful approaches are better here, and others say this could be a good opportunity for new peace negotiations or something like that. Here, the whole thing was officially reviewed again. President Trump will give a speech here. If something really interesting comes up, I'll do an update. If not, you'll see the video without the speech. Israeli media are reporting that there were attacks here by B-2 bombers, stealth bombers, which I already mentioned earlier. The New York Times says that there is now officially a state of war here. And here is Donald Trump again. He is here congratulating the super American armed forces and saying that all the planes are now out of Iran. There is no other military in the world that can do this. And yes, the USA still has the traditional armed forces. Of course, you have to say that. Yes, what she should keep now reserved. No idea. I'm a little at a loss for words there. Feel free to write in the comments below how you see it. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link below for 21 Bitcoin. With the code BitcoinHotel, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Absolutely recommended, especially if we see another dip. I think things could get volatile again in the next few days, and if Bitcoin holds up well here, that would of course be a massive sign of strength, a massive risk-off signal. It will also be interesting to watch the oil price and see how oil develops. Guys, see you next time. Peace out. Feel free to write below how you see the current situation. I think the big crash is coming now. As I said, I don't expect that we're going to see a mega crash or anything like that here. Of course, there can always be volatility, especially on the weekend. If you can only trade Bitcoin here, and if things should escalate, let me know in the comments below how you currently assess the situation. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link to 21 Bitcoin below for you. Buy Bitcoin easily, safely, simply. Use code BitcoinHotel for up to 20% off fees. Highly recommended. Definitely check it out. See you. Until then, peace out.